And now let's bring in Congressman James Comer, House Oversight and Reform Committee ranking member. Sir, thanks for being here. Appreciate your time as always.
My pleasure.
The president had a number of things to say yesterday, saying we have a long way to go. A lot can still go wrong, that he's convinced he's absolutely correct, that this was logical, rational, and the right decision to make, and history will prove that. He also said this.
The evacuation of thousands of people from Kabul is going to be hard and painful, no matter when it started, when we began. There is no way to evacuate this many people without pain and loss of heartbreaking images you see on television. It's just a fact. But we have a long way to go, and a lot could still go wrong.
A week later now, where do you stand on everything we've seen play out, and the fact that yesterday the president even said that they're not necessarily ruling out staying past the deadline, that will be a discussion based off how things are at that time?
Well, we certainly can't remove all the troops until every American and all of our allies who we want out of Afghanistan are out of Afghanistan. And I think history will show it's the right decision to remove the troops from Afghanistan. However, you remove your citizens before you remove the troops. I mean, it's unimaginable that Joe Biden thinks he made the right decision evacuating the troops. And then, okay, let's have all of our American citizens, anyone else who we promised refuge, to come on out now. I mean, that is the worst plan in the history of America. History will not be kind to Joe Biden on this decision and a lot of other decisions, but specifically with respect to Afghanistan. It's a terrible move. We're not even talking about the billions of dollars of American ammunition and weaponry that are now in the hands of the Taliban. This is the worst executed plan from a military standpoint in the history of America.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the most infuriating parts of this whole thing, is that U.S. taxpayer-funded weapons are in the hands of the Taliban. And we're not just talking about a few AR-15s. We're talking about 2,000 U.S. armored vehicles, between 30 and 40 aircraft, night vision, machine guns, other weapons, all paid for, like I said, by Americans.
It's very discouraging. As the ranking Republican on the House Oversight Committee, we're demanding answers as to how much money was wasted, how much weaponry is now in the hands of the Taliban. I don't think the Pentagon has an inventory. I don't think Joe Biden knows. Not only does he not know how many Americans are left behind in Afghanistan, he has no idea how much of our military equipment is now in the hands of Taliban. This is incompetence. And again, it's the worst military move in the history of the United States.
Let's take a look at some of these numbers here. As far as evacuations go, there have been 17,000 evacuated over the past week. 2,500 of them are Americans. Yesterday, during his news conference, the president also talked about the processing stations that are set up in other countries, that planes taking off from Kabul aren't going directly to the United States. They're going to other locations to do a thorough screening of everyone, and everyone getting background checked before they come into the U.S. He talked about the Civilian Reserve Air Fleet, which is commercial aircraft, helping in the safe movement of people from those processing centers. And I think most people agree with that plan, but I think a lot of people are questioning, why are we hearing about this a week later? Was this going on day one, day two, day three? And if not, why did it take so long to get this going?
That's a great question. Why wasn't it happening before we removed the troops initially? I mean, it's unimaginable, again, how Joe Biden has handled this. And how many people are we supposed to evacuate from Afghanistan? How many people did we promise refuge? I don't think Joe Biden has a full accounting of this. Are any of these people that we're taking out of Afghanistan now a part of the Taliban? Are they part of al-Qaeda? We don't know. Congress is asking questions. Joe Biden has refused to answer those questions, and I think it's because he has no idea what the answer to those questions are. It's a very sad day for the taxpayers. We're weakened from a national security standpoint. Our reputation on the national stage has been diminished, and I hope that we can turn it around. But the first priority is to get all of our troops, all of our citizens out of Afghanistan. I don't think you can put a timeline on that. I voted to remove the troops from Afghanistan. That's the right decision. The overwhelming majority of Americans agree with that. However, we should have removed our citizens first. So now we've got to go back in there. We should never leave any American behind. We should never leave any person we promised refuge behind. And unfortunately, this is going to take a while.
Yeah, Congressman, I want to ask you about why you voted to remove troops from Afghanistan, because when you do that, you do remove that, intelligence on the ground. We closed Bagram Air Base, and some people feel like that could lead to a potential another 9/11.
We've been over there 19 years training a military force that we've all witnessed in the last week, didn't have their heart into it. It's very disappointing to see the lack of fight from the Afghani military force. I have friends that have served over there that have worked to try to train these Afghanis to defend their capital city, to defend their country, and they didn't have the will to fight when it came time to fight. It's very disappointing. You can't be a nation builder. We have to accept the fact as Americans that not every country around the world views democracy the way we do. They don't cherish democracy the way that we do. But what we have to do is make sure that we have adequate intelligence, make sure that countries that would harbor terrorists know that if you do anything that would jeopardize one single American, you're going to feel the brunt of the most powerful military in the world. That's the United States military. But unfortunately, because of Joe Biden's indecisiveness and lack of a real plan, I think that we've given the Taliban a recruiting tool. We've diminished our reputation on the national stage. And I think we're going to have to come from behind now with respect to Afghanistan. We're always going to have to keep an eye on it. And it's always going to be a problem. Yeah. But I think that it was the right decision to remove the troops, but we should have gotten our citizens out first.
Real quick, before we let you go, I want to get your take on something going on in your state. In Kentucky, the Democratic governor there suffers a legal defeat in combating the COVID surge. The highest court cleared the way for new laws to rein in his emergency powers. This, as the Delta variant has been spiking. He signed a recent executive order imposing that indoor mask mandate in K-12 schools, childcare, pre-kindergarten programs, et cetera, across the state. What does all of this mean? How big of a deal is it?
Well, it's a good deal. The governor's tried to circumvent the legislature. I was a member of the Kentucky State Legislature for 11 years. Very disappointing to see the way that Democrat Governor Andy Beshear has neglected to communicate with the state legislature. The state legislature passed a series of bills reining in his ability to pass mandates on the people and on private businesses. He disputed that, and the Supreme Court ruled in the favor of democracy, in favor of the legislative branch, in favor of balanced government. So I think it was the right decision by the Supreme Court, and hopefully Governor Andy Beshear will try to communicate with the state legislature and rule in a democratic manner and not in a dictatorial manner, which is the way he's tried to rule with respect to these mandates.